What is up, guys? I hope you enjoyed those shots from Machu Picchu. It was certainly an incredible experience, and I still can't quite believe that we got to go and visit that place finally after a lot of years of dreaming. But first, I've got to change out of my Canadian attire and change into something a little bit more suitable. Ooh, okay, there we go. That's a little bit better. Now I'm in my Peruvian attire. I picked this sweater up in Cusco before we headed off on the Salkantay Trek because I wanted to get that classic photo of me in my llama sweater at Machu Picchu, because you can't really go wrong with that. Although a bit cheesy, I am happy that I did it. So for this video, I wanted to start off by showing you guys actually how beautiful it is there with that little bit of B-roll which you saw at the start. And I hope that got you excited to see Machu Picchu and parts of the Salkantay Trek from my previous videos if you've watched them. But now I wanted to give you a bit of tips on planning that, a breakdown of planning the Salkantay Trek, or which way you want to get to Machu Picchu, because there's many ways that you can do it. And then later on, if you stick around, I will show you all the gear behind me, what I took, and what I recommend you taking if you're going to do the Salkantay Trek. And then I'll break down my camera gear, which I took on that, because I think it's pretty important to plan ahead before you leave to South America if you're doing other parts, to be able to minimize that and choose the best possible gear. But for now, I'm going to start getting into the first part that you kind of need to decide on, and that's how you're going to get to Machu Picchu. I originally knew that I wanted to do a trek to get to Machu Picchu, so that's kind of the first decision. Do you want to make the trek, or do you want to take the bus or the train? So those are two other options that I'm not going to go into too much detail on, but you can take those and it's a day trip or longer if you want. For myself, there's two main options that you can do to get to Machu Picchu, and that's Salkantay and the classic Inca Trail. The Inca Trail is the one that has been going for about 20 years now, that is quite popular. It's a lot busier and you need a permit to go on this trail, and you need to book months in advance. So if you are thinking of that idea, you need to look into it a few months in advance at least, because I do know they sell it very fast. And then the Salkantay Trek, which I did, and you can watch a little bit more details on what that looks like for my last two videos. But the Salkantay Trek is kind of known as the alternative trek to Machu Picchu. It is 4 or 5 days and 3 or 4 nights depending on which route you take and which company you take. So once you decide whether you're taking the bus, train, or you want to do a trek, and then it's deciding on picking a guide company. Many people online would advise that you choose somebody online and book it in head, but as a backpacker I can tell you that you do not have to do this if you're comfortable waiting until you get to Cusco. If I didn't mention it already, Cusco is the main leaving point or jumping off point to get to Salkantay and Machu Picchu. It's an absolutely beautiful city, and I do recommend spending a few days there if you have the chance. But if you're just heading straight off to a trek, you need to get there if you haven't booked in advance and choose. So the choosing part can be quite difficult just because there's a lot of different options and maybe a bit overwhelming. But it's not that bad because everyone kind of provides a similar service, and I haven't heard any terrible stories from any of them really. Although you might read some bad reviews, you've got to make your own decision on what is best for you. The cost varies quite a bit, ranging from around $100 for the very cheapest to $400 or $500 for the top of the line ones. And from what I found online and talking to the service providers themselves, there isn't all that much difference in the experience. You might have a little bit more luxury on the high end and a little less luxury on the low end. I went kind of mid to low mid range, I guess you could say. I didn't go the very cheapest because I didn't find that those options were the best, but I spent around just under $200 American for the 5-day trek with a guide. So I think that's pretty reasonable, because these treks with the guide usually include accommodation, food, and the guiding service and most of your gear. So I think that was probably a good decision based off the fact that this Salkantay Trek does go through some altitude. And if you're uncomfortable with that, it's nice to have somebody that is an expert in that area and can help you get through that. I also do want to mention that there is the possibility of doing this trek on your own, and while we were in South America, we did do most of our stuff self-guided because that is the best option to save money for most backpackers. But I found in this case, in Cusco and in Peru, that just for being able to save your money it really didn't come out that much more expensive to take the guiding service, and that way you didn't have to carry all of your gear. I know I'll probably have somebody say in the comments, oh, it's such a better experience not going with a group, and I usually would agree with that. However, on this case, the cost difference between booking everything yourself and figuring it out, because it does take a lot of time, so that is time is money, I guess, if you want to say that. But we did go with a guide, and I'm happy that we did, because we met some awesome people. We didn't have to question ourselves because what were you going to bring, what we're going to eat, because it's quite remote, so you needed to figure that all out ahead in advance. And the guiding service turned out to be awesome, because the cultural information that we got from a local guide was absolutely worth it, in my opinion. But if you do want to do it yourself, it takes a lot of research, and I'm not even going to dive into that. So I just wanted to mention that before anybody said it below. We did decide to go with a guide myself, and I'll say it again, but I'm very happy with that choice. So now that I've done a general overview on picking whether you want to take a guide, take the bus, train, or just the basics, I'm going to dive into the Salkantay Trek a little bit more, because most of the people here are probably looking for that information. I'm just going to go through a basic overview of the trek, nothing in depth, and if my number's a little bit off, it's hard to remember everything. So day one is about a 2 to 3 hour drive. You have breakfast at a little town I can't remember the name of, and then you go to the starting point of the trek, and then you'll trek up to Salkantay Lake. So Salkantay Lake is a very popular spot for day trips as well from Cusco, but most of, or all of the Salkantay treks start here, and it is a good way to acclimatize as well as see one of the most beautiful spots around Cusco. The water's extremely blue, and being from the Canadian Rockies, I will say that this is almost comparable to something like Lake Louise, which is pretty insane. The color is amazing. And then you got to go back down to not too far, and then that's where you will camp for the first night, whatever your accommodation is, some sort of hut likely. And you'll probably be ready for bed, because the first day at altitude is quite hard on you, as I found. Not terribly hard, but you will feel it. So day two, you'll be waking up at your whatever accommodation that you had that night, depending on which guide you take. And then you are on to the biggest day of the trek. I would say it's about 22 kilometers distance, and you have to cross the Salkantay Pass, which is one of the largest climbs on the trek. Our guide Carlos jokingly called it the Gringo Killer, but it goes up to 4,600 meters, and it was the first time that I hiked up to an elevation of this high, and not extremely crazy in terms of some of the peaks in the world, but I definitely felt it. So if you are trying to prepare, I would recommend at least a few days in Cusco to acclimatize, because when you're hiking up that and out of breath, you will be really wishing that you took more days if you don't. Another option is to take something like Diamox, which is an altitude sickness pill, and it can definitely improve the process or speed it up to make you more comfortable at altitude. But I didn't do that, and I felt relatively okay. They also use coca leaf tea, which is a local thing in South America, especially in the Andes, that helps with the altitude. And I don't know 100% that it works, but I think that it definitely did. Maybe it was more mental than anything, but they swear by it down there. So I think that it helped us out. It's supposed to be lots of vitamins and a little bit of caffeine, so it helps get you going in those harsher conditions at altitude. But after you cross the path, we've got another crazy 10 kilometers downhill to your second night of camping. I'm not sure what accommodation that everybody has here, but it will vary. For the third day, it's not such a big day. You're walking in the river valley. We did some fun stuff there, went for a little dip, put our feet in the cold water, which was super nice for anybody that had blisters. Got to relax a little bit, and then we took a car ride to another spot, and then went to the hot springs. I can't remember the name of the hot springs, but it's a classic Salkantay event that most of the groups do, and it's quite a nice way to relax after walking quite a few kilometers in the past few days, and it's a good way to catch up on some rest from a shorter day. The fourth day, our group did a slightly different thing, and some of the companies go this way as well, to another peak. Often some will just take the river valley around, but we did another quite a big altitude climb. We stopped at a local coffee plantation and had some coffee. They called it local Starbucks, which was kind of funny to see that sign out in the middle of nowhere. We also had some fresh avocado and a fried banana, so that was an awesome way to kick the day off, and kind of got everyone prepped for the 600 meters elevation that we had to climb right after that. Then we had that climb, which I just mentioned, and we got to a beautiful view, a surprise actually from our guide, because he didn't tell us that we're going to be able to see Machu Picchu. And I kind of was confused when I got up there. I was like, no way, that's it. So I was looking and kind of curious, and my guide was laughing in the background, and we asked him, and it was Machu Picchu. So that was our first glimpse of Machu Picchu, which was incredible. We all sat down for a nice rest here and got to take it all in for the first time. He explained a lot about the Inca Empire and how these different cultural sites were all built up and eventually building to Machu Picchu and many of the other sites in the area. So that was extremely cool. After we got to this peak, however, we had to go back downhill, not only downhill for 2 hours, but after that we had some lunch at Hydroelectrica, and Hydroelectrica is the first spot. You can jump on the train from this side of things and take it, but that is another expense that we didn't want to pay, so we walked the 10 kilometers along the tracks below Machu Picchu in the river valley along to Aguas Calientes. It's a pretty boring walk, I'm not gonna lie, but with everybody it's quite fun. But by the time you get there, it's getting dark and you're ready for bed. But don't worry, because there's a nice hotel room or hostel waiting for you at the end, and it's kind of a nice way to end the day on your fourth day in preparation to going up Machu Picchu the next morning, because you have an early morning. So even though there's a nice couple breweries and things around there that you can enjoy, don't get too crazy, because if you are doing the final ascent and climbing those crazy stairs up to Machu Picchu, I wouldn't recommend getting too wild the night before, because they are quite something, uneven and crazy. But for day 5, the kind of apex of the whole thing, the climax of our journey, is Machu Picchu, which is what mostly everybody is going to Cusco for. It's world renowned, it's one of the 7 wonders, and I definitely can understand why after being there, and I don't think that it's a gimmicky or cheesy at all. I found a lot of fulfillment in going there. It was a really beautiful site, so for anybody wondering, that's my honest opinion. But day 5, so we started the day at 4 a.m. in Aguas Calientes at our hotel. Everybody had our pre-made breakfast / lunches from the day before. We picked them up at the local place that had been pre-arranged, and then we headed our way down to the entrance to the stairs. So it's about a half an hour walk. You can take buses down there, but again, it's just another cost that we didn't want to spend. Once we got to the stairs, we had to wait in a little bit of a line, but luckily we were early enough that it was only about 20 minutes before we could enter, and that's at 5 a.m. So entrance to the stair sets starts at 5 a.m. and then it's 1,700 uneven cobblestone stairs to the top. I really wanted to get up there as one of the first people, so I kind of went really fast with some other members of the group, and it was a beating kind of thing. I was extremely beat by the time I got to the top. I hadn't sweated that much on the whole entire trek just because of speeding up those stairs, and every step is uneven, so it really is quite the workout, and I was completely dead once I got to the top. I maybe wouldn't recommend going up as fast as I did because we still had to wait in a little bit of line to wait till 6 a.m. For when we could get let into Machu Picchu, the area itself. So once we got up there to the gates, we waited for the rest of our group or whoever we wanted, and got through the gates into Machu Picchu. It was an absolutely insane feeling walking in there finally at last after doing around 50 some kilometers to get to this point. We were all pretty tired and excited at the same time. It was quite a kind of cool feeling. It's hard to explain, but I'm sure people that hike kind of understand once you get to the peak of a mountain or something like that. With your entrance tickets, you're only allowed in for 3 hours into the actual site, so you definitely want to spend it wisely. And we first headed up to the Sun Gate, which is an Inca site which lets the sun, where the sun first comes through the mountain, I guess, onto the Machu Picchu at different times of year. So we went up there, and it gives you a beautiful alternative site or alternative view to the whole area in the Machu Picchu site, and I highly recommend going up there if you're interested in seeing another one, or if you have enough energy to get up there, especially after doing the trek. But the views are incredible, and especially if you get up there right away, the sun is just popping over the other mountains, so it's a beautiful sight. We walked down after from there and met our guide. We also met some of the local llamas that they use to keep the grounds nice and ready. They mow the grass basically because it would be hard to get mowers up there. But by this time, there's quite a few groups in the area and lots of people, so you have to keep moving. But the final area of the Machu Picchu center, I guess, only goes one way around. You have to follow the track, so we didn't go there until we met our guide. But from there out, we took a nice interpretive walk with him, and he explained a lot of the ins and the outs of how they built everything, which was actually amazing. We were all quite tired, so we were taking our time and really getting to take in all the information. The sun was fully up right now, and while a lot of the trek was at high altitude and very cold, this was quite hot now. And I imagine in the summertime, the middle of summer, it would be very hot walking through there midday. But we had a great experience, and Carlos did an absolutely amazing job explaining all of this, and I'm sure that most of or all of the guides would do a good job explaining to this, but I'm not going to go too much information on that because you can do research or experience that for yourself. That's not really the point of this video. Then we had the end of our tour. We said goodbye to our guide, and we had our final descent of the journey. We walked down those 1,700 steps again. It was an entire mission on itself, but everyone was glad to get to the bottom. We knew that we had another 10 kilometers along the tracks because we did not decide to take the train back to town because that's a cost of around $80 American, which is quite expensive when the whole trek is only around $120, $150. So we didn't do that, but we had to not suffer, but we did have to walk and kind of suffer that last 10 kilometers to get back to Hydroelectrica, where we would meet our van. Once we got back to Hydroelectrica, we had some lunch there and awaited our van back to town. This is another big part of the journey. It takes about 6 hours due to how curvy the roads are, and it was actually funny looking at the map because it was incredibly windy. It's about a million switchbacks, but that was the last part of our journey to and from Machu Picchu. The van ride is quite crazy, and if you do have the funds, I may recommend that you take the train because it's quite a luxurious experience, and you get to chill and have some nice snacks and maybe a drink along the tracks as you say goodbye to that part of the Andes. But if you're on the budget option, it's definitely not terrible, and you can kind of reminisce and hang out with all of your friends that you just did the trek with on the way back to Cusco. But that is enough about the trek. If anybody has questions, put them below, please, and I will do my best to answer those about the trek and whatnot. But for anybody that's really interested in it, I cannot stress enough that you just got to go ahead and make your decisions on how you're going to do it, because you will not regret going to Machu Picchu. Let's move on now to get into some of the gear and most important parts. So now I'm going to go into the gear side of things. This is going to be much different if you do decide to do it on your own, and a little bit between guiding companies. But since I was already doing some trekking here in South America, or there in South America while we were there, I had some of the pieces that we needed, such as a sleeping bag and trekking poles already with us. But if you are going to be doing a lot of trekking, these are some of the things that I would recommend bringing, and especially for Salkantay. I will start just with my bag. This is my day pack that I had, and since I was doing a lot of photography and stuff, I went with a 35 liter. This is in particular is a Gregory Stout 35 liter. Lots of people could make do with a 24 liter or possibly smaller, just to carry your day-to-day stuff, such as water and a few snacks and maybe your extra layers. But since I have my camera gear in here, I like to have the extra space, and 35 liters is about the perfect size. Next is a sleeping bag. Now this is something that is often provided. I'm kind of jumping around between items, but this is just what I grabbed. This is often provided by groups, or sometimes about a $10 rental fee. I was using it previously for some camping, so I wanted to bring my own just because it's super light and I was comfortable in my own gear. This one is a Nemo sleeping bag. It's only about 3 pounds, so super light. I was extremely happy with it. It's cool enough on the first few nights, so even though this is good to about -9 degrees Celsius or 15 degrees Fahrenheit, you wouldn't want a bigger bag, but you might want to be sleeping in some socks and a layer, something like this, just to keep you nice and warm. And that is something that you can just grab at Cusco to rent for the trek, but like I said, me personally, I like to have my own, so I brought this one. It packs down nice and small, and it fit right in here, so it wasn't a problem. And a lot of the guided company have horses to take stuff for you with you. Some people may not agree with this, but a lot of of the groups do offer this option. Next is something that I think is super important, and I may have thought in the past it was kind of goofy to be wearing hiking boots on these trips, but hiking boots are like an extremely important thing if you want to do some of these longer treks while you're traveling. I didn't like wearing these day to day, and some can be heavier and bulky to carry, but in this instance I think that it's like one of the #1 pieces that you need, something that's comfortable and that you're comfortable wearing, whether you want to find something ahead of time. But I brought these with me from Canada. These are the Keen Adventure Low, I believe. Thank you very much, Keen, for sending me those actually. I've really liked them. These ones are all completely waterproof. They're not leather, but I've been really liking them just because of how light they are. It's all about personal preference, but everyone will probably find something that they will like. They range in dollars, but try a few on and make sure that you're going to be comfortable walking long distances. A small tip too is maybe go a slight half size or maybe even a size larger, just so when you're doing the downhills that your toes aren't rubbing. That's just what I decide, but I think that you should always be bringing these, whether you want to wear the shoe type, the lower ones, or the high ones that cover your ankles. I like the ankle coverage and support. But on to the next piece. I'm just going to quickly touch on poles, and these are easily to rent in Cusco for the Salkantay Trek, but we did have our own ones. We carried them with us. They don't have to be anything fancy, but often the lighter is the better, as long as they're sturdy. They're not extremely needed per se, but they're absolutely amazing for going downhill. A lot of people kind of joke about having them, saying that you're not a good hiker or whatever, but I think they are an awesome addition to your bag and definitely make climbing sometimes and going downhill when it's slippery and a lot easier. They save the knees too. If you've ever had any issues with knees, these are a savior for me anyways. And onto some of the outerwear gear that I use. Here I just have a North Face Gore-Tex. There's a million different options for rain jackets, but in the Andes the weather, and especially different times of the year, the weather can be kind of crazy, and Salkantay Trek is known for some rain. We didn't get too much pouring rain, but we did get wet a few times, so this one is something I highly recommend. Gore-Tex is a great material that is kind of known throughout all of the different companies, but some of the companies offer a similar material with different names, so if you can find something that's relatively waterproof, that one is imperative, I think, for all adventures to bring for all hikes. Next is a down or some kind of insulator. This one is actual down. This is Lululemon from Canada. I used to have a North Face that I really liked. They both pack down super well. They're synthetic or real down. You can decide on that, but something that's going to keep you warm and that will get small and nice and tight to fit in your bag. It's pretty simple, and you can even use a fleece or a sweater, but this one is good and it's super light. And that kind of covers like the basic stuff. Another funny little thing that we hadn't bought but we wish that we had in previous hikes and did get for the Salkantay Trek is a poncho. They're super cheap, so if you don't have the best rain jacket, you can use a poncho. I don't have mine with me right now for this video, but if you look around Cusco or pretty much any hiking town in the world, you can get some sort of plastic poncho. They range from about $5 to $20, and they are a lifesaver when it's pouring rain and you don't want to get your bag covered with water. Another point while I say that is a bag cover, which I forgot to mention. You can just toss that over for waterproofing of your backpack, and most of them have waterproofing on the exterior anyways, but that helps to make sure that anything inside will be staying dry. And that pretty much covers it for physical gear to get you through the trek. When you meet with your guide for the actual night before, which most of the companies do, they will give you a rundown on exactly what you need, and that's important. So everyone will kind of be able to fit together the kit that works best for them. Just while it's on the top of my head is socks too. That's an extremely important one to go along with your hiking boots, just to make sure that you're not getting blisters and that you're really comfortable the whole entire time. But from here, let's move on to camera gear. On to camera gear. So this is a part that I've actually been quite passionate about in the last while, on top of travel, is photography and photographing my adventures. I don't go in make my kit extremely small and go with like a compact point and shoot, I actually do carry a mirrorless camera. It's not quite as large as the old DSLR that I used to carry, but I do go with a few lenses even on these longer hikes. You can cut that down, but I'm going to go through exactly what I took with me. Starting off, just to give you a good idea, I use a Boundary camera case here. I can't exactly remember what the name of it is here. I'll put the name right here if you're looking it up. But this is an insert that I can put in any bag. So whether I'm taking my large one for self-guided treks or this day pack like I was talking, this kit fits a camera body and 3 lenses actually, and a large telephoto. So it's quite amazing what you can stuff in here. I've also got a few other attachments for my camera, such as batteries and all my memory cards that fit in a little pocket, so that it's been a savior for pretty much all my travel events. The last year, it's awesome. It just slips right into any bag, so that keeps my camera safe and protected in whichever bag I want to use that day. So let's go into my camera body. I can't show you it because I'm filming this video with it, but it's probably one of the ones I would highly recommend for anybody that's looking to upgrade their camera these days and for a decent price point for video and photo. This is the Sony A7III. They're coming out with a lot of new models these days, but this one for the price is extremely good. It's a little bit smaller than the Canon and Nikon DSLRs that were very prominent in the last few years, and Sony has been absolutely killing it. So for the size and power that packed into that body, I've been really happy with it. So now that I'm on the Sony system, is some Sony lenses. I'll start with my Sony gear. The big boy. This is the Sony A7III telephoto. This will help you get those nice mountain peaks or the compressed shots in the valleys for your subject. I like having a telephoto in case I see nature or anything like that, and it helps me fill some details. Again, this is the Sony A7III f 4.5 to 5.6, and it's a little bit bigger, but for the range it fits perfectly into my kit. It's nice to have a telephoto whenever you're traveling, I find. Next is my wide lens that I took. I grabbed this one right away before I left on the trip, and I'm super happy that I did. It was a bit better priced than the Sony 16 to 35, and that is the Tamron 17 to 28. Like I said, it's got a super nice wide range, and it is a 2.8 aperture, so it's nice and fast for shooting in the darker situations and for getting some nice depth of field. It's awesome for landscape, making vlogs, filming, everything's kind of like that, since it's quite a compact lens. And yeah, it was great for this trip. It also fits right into this bag. I usually leave this one on my camera for everything that I shoot day to day, and I can just switch between this and my 70-300, so that covers quite a lot of range. Next, we'll move on to the run that covers that middle range, kind of the 28 to 70 range in my kit. I like prime lenses, so I carried an adapted Canon Nifty 50 50mm 1.8 with me. This one covers that mid-range, and instead of carrying something like a 28 to 70 or something like that, which a lot of the companies and people carry with them, I wanted to have a faster aperture. So I used the Canon 50mm, which is just adapted. I have a cheap adapter with me this time, but I think I'll stick to that. I like to have the prime lens for shooting in the really dark situation or portraits. It's kind of a funky lens, especially just having the 50mm, but I think I like that range, and it gives you a little bit different perspective than a classic zoom or something, especially when you can stop, get it right down to f1.8 or f2. That is super nice to have. But that pretty much covers all of my camera gear. I didn't even take a tripod or anything like that, or a stabilizer. Everything that I've been shooting is shot handheld, and thanks to Sony's in-body stabilization, everything stays relatively smooth, and I just got to be careful, and it's been absolutely awesome with that kit. If you have any questions below, I keep it quite simple with everything, so if you have questions of why I use this or why I don't use something else, I'd love to answer those. I'd like to do a little bit more of camera stuff in the future. I like talking about it, and I think it's cool to see why people decide to take certain lenses and what their kit is for traveling. As you can see, mine's quite simple. Even though I've got 3 lenses, it fits right into this pack, and I have got everything that I need. I also did have a drone with me on the trek. I don't have it here in front of me, but I have the DJI Mavic Air. I got a couple of shots that I showed in a few of the videos. You can't fly the drone everywhere, and I really want to stress that. So don't overpower the wishes of the local people by flying it wherever you think you can. That's not cool. But when you do have the options at such as Salkantay Lake or some of the viewpoints, you can fly it, but just make sure that is okay with your guide. I've been super happy with the DJI Mavic Air just because it flies super well, it's super powerful, and for the size, which is about this big, it's incredible. It got a lot of range, and it's got a beautiful camera on it for that size. So some people may compare that to the new Mavic Pro 2, but I think for the size, for traveling, it's perfect for me. Anyways, that pretty much covers all of the gear talk that I wanted to say. So please hit me up with some questions below or on my Instagram. I love chatting about this stuff. And for now, that's all I want to talk about for gear. Anyways, that's quite a bit of talking now, and I actually like this stuff. I love sharing about my travels. I hope that I didn't miss too many things for you guys, and if you have any questions, like I said, please do not hesitate to ask me. But I just wanted to talk about a few final points here for the trek. If you're thinking about going to Peru, I had such a magical experience. You see so many photos of the classic alpacas or llamas or the colorful wardrobe that the people in the villages wear, and that you might think looks cheesy a little bit, and you can't believe that, oh, that's not going to be exactly what it is. But I cannot stress enough of how true that is. It's amazing. The places that we went, we got to see that the local people were wearing that. We saw lots of llamas everywhere. Just those two things to mention, but my experience was very, not totally authentic, I guess you wouldn't want to say that, just because it is tourism and you are going to see tourism all over the world, but I still had such an amazing experience. I think the people are very genuine, and I wouldn't recommend Peru to anybody, especially backpackers and travelers. It's quite cheap accommodation, there's amazing food, and then on to Machu Picchu. Machu Picchu is something that's on a lot of people's lists, and I don't see why you should not go there. It's getting quite busy these days, so I think that if you are interested in going, they're going to be tightening things up and letting a few more people. So if you want to go, you should probably get there in the next few years while you can. Definitely abide by all the rules. I don't want to see us losing the privilege to seeing these beautiful sights. Like, just don't litter, don't be crossing fences or making a bad show for us photographers especially, or travelers, young people, backpackers, whatever you want to say. We have so much opportunity and it's amazing, so we don't want to ruin that. But Machu Picchu, I've heard some bad things about people saying it's so busy or whatnot, and that it takes away from it. But if you look past that, everyone is there to experience it, whatever their story is and why they want to visit these places. You can't let that take away from you. Experience it for what it is, and with our information that we got from our guide about the Inca culture and everything that built it up to this place, and the actual views and just where it was built is absolutely incredible. I can't say enough how much I actually enjoyed it. The trek itself, the Salkantay Trek, also made it amazing. You're on this journey with people, you start getting to know them, especially if you're in a group and you're hanging out, doing this crazy walking every day. You're super tired, but you finally make it to Machu Picchu. It's kind of everything is paid off, and it's super fulfilling to be able to stand up there and say that you've got to be there, not in a bragging way, but like, it's just really, really cool to see that and kind of stand where that history was told. I'm not going to talk too much more, but I've been really enjoying filming this stuff, and I want to do more of this. I've got lots of videos coming out, so please like and subscribe and comment. I'd love to chat with you guys on Instagram or in the comments down below. So thank you very much for watching this. I've got a lot of content coming out from Peru onward here, and Ecuador and Colombia as well, a whole bunch of vlogs from there. And I'm going to try to do some cinematic videos entirely, a little bit of short film stuff. So if you watch it, I would really appreciate that. We're back in Canada now, and I'm filming some other cool stuff going forward, some adventure stuff, snowmobiling, skiing, and soon to be hiking in the summer here. So thank you guys very much, and if you like this information, like I said, please like and subscribe. Peace. This is Dustin Cressy. Thank you for watching.